Vice President Joe Biden not running for president. To get more perspective on this, we want to bring in 24-hour News 8 political reporter Rick Albin. Rick, are you there?
I am, and I must tell you that an hour ago, if you would have asked me if the vice president was going to run for president, I would have said I thought so. In fact, I was looking just earlier this morning at some of the deadlines for filing for some of the early primaries. If you take Iowa out of the mix, the vice president really didn't have to make a firm commitment until the day after Thanksgiving. That's the filing deadline for the New Hampshire primary, probably where he would have had his first best shot in the Northeastern corridor to show some kind of power running for president of the United States. I was speculating earlier today he might do just that. But as it turns out, the vice president has decided, and it appears that he may have decided very, very late, maybe as early as late yesterday or early this morning, that he is not going to run. Yet he gave a very presidential-sounding speech. He sounded all but a candidate when he talked about the priorities and his passion for those priorities. But he had already started the entire speech by saying he was not a candidate. We won't go back through all of the family history and all of the political history and what may have gone into this decision. But I can tell you it changes the face of the Democratic primary significantly because he has been polling very close to Bernie Sanders in these polls, even as an unannounced candidate, somebody who hadn't said they were getting in. So that changes that dynamic now. Where do those numbers go? Is 19 or 20%? Do they gradually gravitate naturally, towards the front runner Hillary Clinton? Or can Bernie Sanders pick up some of that support? If he does that make him a stronger contender? So what happens to the Democratic primary is going to be a big question too. But one thing we know this morning or this afternoon as it is now, Joe Biden is not running for president, and that does change the landscape considerably, Susan.
It does. You know, Rick, he mentioned early on that he just didn't have the ability at this time to mount a winning campaign because he didn't have the time. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, and I think the vice president is in the best position to know that. Certainly he has very good political operatives working around him. On the other hand, the bundlers, those are those people who go out and gather large sums of money within the rules of the Federal Election Commission and deliver it kind of all at once to save the candidate from having to go out and get those individual donations. More than 50% of those bundlers that worked for President Obama had not yet committed to Hillary Clinton or any other candidate. So to suggest that there wasn't the ability to form some kind of a campaign committee and raise money, I think is a little bit off the mark. But what he may have considered is that while he might have been able to compete at some level, a whole lot of the very elite staff had already been taken in by the Clinton campaign, and it was late. Some others may have committed to other projects, and it might have been difficult to get the right kind of people on the ground and going in time. I would agree it would have been very difficult for him to get the kind of on-the-ground organization that he would have needed, for example, in Iowa, but I suggest he didn't need Iowa to go forward with this. I think that is one component. I think there are other components. And by the way, in the days to come, we may find out that there was internal pressure from some within the Democratic Party not wanting to have a further splintered primary. Democrats would very much would like to not have the kind of ups and downs and internal arguments that Republicans are bound to have with the number of candidates that they have. So it'll be interesting to see what we learn and when we learn about the ultimate decision. But what we know now, Joe Biden's not in. That makes Hillary Clinton's life considerably easier. But it's going to be interesting to see if that clears the way for anybody else.
That's right. Okay. Rick Albin reporting live. Thanks for the perspective on this, Rick. And we certainly will continue to follow any developments this afternoon as we have just listened to a live announcement from Vice President Joe Biden that he will not be running for president. We'll have a lot more later today on your 24-hour News 8 at 5.